What happens when a man who built his life around dopamine, distraction, and destruction suddenly sees his own potential clearly for the first time? Today's conversation is about addiction, masculinity, discipline, psychedelics, and what it really takes to change your life after the insight. Today, my guest is John Borden, author of Your Mindset is Your Reality. He's a former weekend binge drinker, cocaine user, gambler, and tobacco smoker. And now he is an ultra marathoner, an entrepreneur, and disciplined leader. John, welcome to the expansion room. And I am excited to have this conversation. And what I am most interested in is hearing about not just how psilocybin changed your life, but really what you had to become or who you had to become after, right? Because it's not about the mushrooms per se, but it's what we can then step into after that. All right, so
Yeah,
welcome. Good to
it,
have you here.
it's so good to be here, Siobhan.
Well,
And you definitely hit the nail on the head there. Something that I tell everybody is that it wasn't the mushrooms that changed my life. I did that, but they showed me the way out and the way that I could move forward. And it was my job to take those steps. And so, I'm eternally grateful to finding psilocybin, but more grateful to myself for having the strength to do with the knowledge what I have done and to move my life in the direction that it's going in because it's a hell of a lot better being here versus where I was 4 years ago.
amen. So when was it that you realized that your life was being run by cheap dopamine hits, as you
Yeah.
call them?
Well, so I first had the realization that I had a problem in maybe like August or September of 2020. It was at
Okay.
that point I had been laid off from my job for, I guess like 4 or 5 months at that point. Was trying to find a new job, but it was the middle of COVID and the unemployment benefits were really nice. So I didn't really have much incentive to try to find something new. And
Hmm.
when you don't have much incentive because you're getting paid more money to stay at home, it makes drinking and doing coke and playing video games all day a pretty attractive option. And
Yeah.
so I was doing that and, not realizing how much I was just wrecking my body, my mental health, my physical
Mm.
health, all encompassing. And I had an experience with ketamine actually that showed me how bad this problem that I had was.
Yeah.
And that was really, a catalyst in recognizing that I had an issue. But it took 2+ years from that point until I actually really did something about it.
Ah, okay.
Hmm.
So you saw it as a problem. Would you say you saw it as an addiction at that time as well?
Yeah, well, so what had happened was is that I bought the ketamine kind of by accident. I met a guy in a back alley in Newark, New Jersey, and thought I was buying MDMA from him. But when I got it home, I was
Wow.
like, "That's not Molly. What is that?" And so, after doing some Google searches, I realized it was ketamine, and everything I'm reading online says, "Oh yeah, it's kind of like a party drug similar to MDMA." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I guess we'll try this." And so I laid out, you know, had the last of the Coke that I had on me at that point, and I did it. And at probably 2 a.m., I'm like, okay, well, fuck it, let's try some ketamine. And so I laid out a Coke-sized line of ketamine, snorted that, and went into a K-hole. And when I did that, the only thing that I remember from that experience was, "Hey, dude, you got a problem," and I came out of that like, well, I got a problem, but didn't really know what direction to
Hmm.
go from there. I started to do some
Right.
things to try to, take me off of that because at that point I had to have a drink in my system to fall asleep. And so,
Okay.
after discussing it with a friend, was convinced to try, THC, try weed, and that helped me stop drinking as much. And
Yeah.
even at one point I went a month without a drink. But it was like as soon as I started drinking again, I couldn't stop it. So it was like
Okay.
a desire was there, effort was being made, but I didn't really know how to, and still felt like I was a slave to my impulses.
Gotcha. Okay. When you think about that time and years before that, what did masculinity mean to you at that point?
Mm. I mean, masculinity growing up, I was born in 92, and so, all of my real formative years are like the early 2000s, and, at that time you have, culture was just in a very interesting place with like over the top bravado masculinity and hypersexualized
Yeah.
femininity, and, just a very blurred line between what is real and what is over the top bravado and a lot of those things. And so what was masculine was you know Rocky and Arnold Schwarzenegger and big
Mm,
pulsing muscles, and like I don't care who the hell you are, I'm going to do things my way type masculinity. And so that's what really my frame of masculinity was through essentially my whole life until I had my awakening with psilocybin. Is just this like lock
okay.
emotions, lock feelings away, plow forward with what you think's best and fuck what anyone else thinks kind of attitude.
Yeah. And so that so the substances you were using really helped to keep that form of masculinity front and center for you, basically. You were
Yeah, most
being
definitely.
that person.
Most definitely, especially because I mean that's not who I really was. I don't know if that's who any of us actually really are. But there's this
Right.
version of, what you feel you're supposed to be that's being put forward by the media. And,
Yeah.
you know, alcohol and cocaine allowed me to be more of that person that I wasn't. They allowed me to
Yeah.
be fake and be, that version that I thought other people wanted to see out of me. And they allowed me to be more okay with putting that forward rather than just being myself. And, what I learned through
Yeah.
my experience was that being myself is really the key. I mean, it's a cliche thing, but everyone else is taken, and it's a saying for a reason. Because we all have to live
Yep.
our own lives. We all have our special gifts that we have to put out there.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And so what you're describing in those years is what a lot of people coin now as toxic masculinity, right? That
Mm-hmm.
that version of yourself that's not really real, that is coming from a place of inauthenticity and trying to hold that. And we see it all over the place, even more than probably in the early 2000s. And trying to hold that does as much damage to the men who are trying to do it as to the women in their lives. But we've
Yeah,
often talked about how toxic masculinity actually affects women, but I think it goes both ways.
yeah. Well, it's kind of like hatred. Or what's it? Jealousy is the one thing that you hold that destroys yourself, or hatred's the one thing that you hold that
Mm,
destroys yourself. Whatever the saying is. I mean,
yeah.
it's so true, right? The more that we hold on to these negative feelings, and really, that's what I believe toxic masculinity or that version of masculinity really is it's you not liking yourself enough to just be yourself
Yeah.
rather than just showing up how you are. And the
Yeah.
more that we can be authentic, the more that we're going to be ourselves, the more that we're going to feel comfortable in our skins, the more that we're going to connect with other people, the more that we're going to make a positive impact for other people. Because
Hmm.
no matter who you are, right, you could be the most feminine dude out there, right? If you are yourself, there's going to be someone that resonates with you. There's going to be somebody who feels a positive impact from your presence and you just being who you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In the effort to be that kind of masculine man, would you say there was deeper anxiety underneath that?
Yeah,
Or depression or any other kind of mental health stuff going on there?
Yeah, well, so I'd been diagnosed with anxiety. I was taking SSRIs for a number of years leading up to my experience with psilocybin.
Yeah.
And what I realized through my experience was that I had depression, I had anxiety, I had substance abuse problems, but it all really stemmed from a lack of self-esteem that I just never had my whole life. And
Hmm.
so, it all kind of goes hand in hand where there's this lack of self-esteem where I don't feel comfortable in my own skin. I'm not confident in who I am and how I show up in the world. I think I have to be something different than what I am to be accepted by people. And so there's this disconnect, and that's really where the anxiety comes in, is because I'm trying to be something to be liked rather than just being myself and then being,
Hmm.
either accepted or rejected by whoever, but then who gives a shit because you're yourself, right? But if you don't like who yourself is and you're trying to make yourself into something else, and you put forth all this effort to being something just to be accepted, and now all of a sudden that's, being rejected, or that's, not fitting in the way that you hope it to. And so that creates this huge, huge, problem that's even bigger than it would have been otherwise if you were just yourself.
It does. It does indeed.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, I imagine with all of that too, we talk a lot on this show about nervous system dysregulation and how to re-regulate, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I would imagine just living a life in some other idea of who you're supposed to be causes a lot of dysregulation.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
And that was one really big thing that helped me to reclaim my life when I did have my psilocybin awakening. Like
Hmm.
I said before, the mushrooms didn't do that. I
Yeah.
did. And one of the things that I realized through that was that breath work was something that could actually make a difference. And crazy, you start doing it, and now all these positives show up. And the
Uh-huh.
central nervous system regulation is just incredible, from being able to use your breath to slow yourself down and stop
Yep.
those anxious thoughts, or the upregulation of the central nervous system, and bring yourself back down. I squared up with a dude in the middle of the street, which is crazy because I've never thrown a punch before. I've been in altercations and I've been punched, but I've only ever subdued the other person and made sure that it wasn't going to go any further. But
Gotcha.
anyway, I'm on my bike and I kind of wave this guy to go past me. He doesn't, so I go in front of him, and as I go in front of him, he decides to zoom past me about a foot away while I'm on the bike. So, I feel like I'm in danger. I throw up my hands like, what the hell? He slams on his brakes, puts his window down, asks me if I want to go, and so I throw my bike on the side of the road. I take off my helmet. I meet him in the street, and as he's got his hands up, like looking like he's ready to throw a punch, all of a sudden he just asks me if he can hug me. And so he
Wow.
hugs me, starts crying, and says that, he's been going through a lot of stuff, and, apologized for getting heated. And, we hugged, and he cried, and I took him through some breathing exercises to calm him down. And as we're like, you know, shaking hands to go, he kind of feels my body, and he's like, "Oh shit, I'm glad I didn't fuck with you." So I invited him to the house for a workout, and he came over, and we got a great workout today, and we're
Oh
great
my
friends now.
goodness.
So yeah, it's
Wow.
really funny the way life works out sometimes.
Indeed, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's so key to note because I think a lot of people, when they are in that space of agitation or anger that seems really instant, if we pause, right? You were waiting for him to punch you.
Hmm.
So you paused and it allowed him to have a moment in his own brain. Because most people, when they're in that state, are going through something,
Hmm.
right? They're
Yeah,
either having a bad day, got bad news, whatever.
hmm
Yeah.
and that's exactly it, right? I mean, like, my
Yeah.
wife and I say it all the time. You don't know what's going on in that other car, right? Like
That's right.
they could have a child screaming at them, right? They could have just
Hmm.
gotten in a big fight. They could be racing to the hospital or something. You don't know what someone else is doing. So,
That's
being
right.
upset at the way that someone else drives or something like that is only causing you more trouble than you need to give it.
Yeah,
You just have to approach everything with kindness and an open heart.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that what you just shared also highlighted a bit about like emotional states or emotional patterns with men, right? Anger is often the first thing
Hmm.
that we see, um, and it's oftentimes covering up so much more,
Oh yeah.
so
You
much
know,
more.
I'm writing a speech right now for a a speech that I'm giving in a week and a half, and
Hmm.
part of it I talk about my relationship with my father. And when I was a kid, my dad was a lot of things.
Mm.
An exemplar dad was not one of them, but he had a big a hard time regulating his emotions. Especially when
Mm.
he had been drinking. And um, anger was the most prominent emotion that I ever saw out of him. And
Okay.
as a kid, and through my early adult years, I just thought he was a dick. I just thought he was obnoxious and an asshole and yada yada yada. But then
Hmm.
when I went through my mushroom experience and I was able to look more objectively at him and myself, I saw the same way that he used anger in me, and I saw that anger was a tool
Yeah.
to claw back dignity when I had lost it. And I realized
Mm.
that he was doing the same thing, is that he was using it as a way to try to control in instances where he had lost control.
Yeah. Wow. And that the mushroom showed you is a thing that you could not unsee. It's like
Hmm.
you were getting to step into his shoes in a way to have a better understanding of him.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. I call it, going into bystander mode with the
Mm-hmm.
mushrooms, is that it's kind of like watching a TV show where you're able to see all the characters very clearly for who they are and the actions that they take, and you don't have an emotional investment in it. It's just you're just watching
Yep.
a show and you're just seeing what's there. So you're a
Yes.
bystander in your own life.
Yeah. Yeah. Reminds me of remember the Christmas movie Scrooge?
I
And,
don't know
and
if
it,
I've seen the movie, but obviously have uh, what Christmas Carol, have seen
yeah.
versions of that a whole number of times.
Hmm. It's kind of that similar idea of showing him his life in different spots as
Hmm.
the bystander.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is Christmas
Yeah.
future. All your friends are gonna leave you. No, please.
Exactly. Exactly. So I'm wondering, how did the experience of mushrooms connect you back to your truest self, your truest identity?
Mm. It just showed me that I didn't need to be anything other than myself,
Yeah.
and that's what I was my whole life. I'm somebody who wanted to be accepted for so
Hmm.
long, and that
Yeah.
was just never happening as a kid, and I never understood why I was being picked on in school, or why I was
Hmm.
ostracized by people in my grade and stuff like that. And it was like all I really wanted was to be accepted, but by trying to be accepted, I was making myself be something that I wasn't. And so that was
Yeah.
just making me further away from who I wanted to be and who I needed to be to actually be accepted. And
Hmm.
so, the mushrooms showed me that. And the mushrooms showed me that my whole life had been a lie, basically. It had been me
Hmm.
lying to myself about who I am, and then lying to other people, by not just being myself. And that
Hmm.
if I could, take a step back and say, hey, well, from this point forward, I'm going to live in truth. And, I'm not going to sugarcoat stuff to people. I'm not going to, pretend to believe something or think something I don't, just to, get acceptance from someone. I'm going to live my life as authentically as possible. And it's been an incredible switch that I've been able to make in that regard.
Beautiful. Beautiful. What were those months, those days and months like after the experience? What did you do in those days and months?
Yeah. Well, so, it was about a month of really transformational experiences that I had because it was six experiences with the mushrooms that started with a half gram, so like, just a little bit more than a microdose, and then working
Mm-hmm.
up to like 2 gram doses. And when I got back from, those experiences, I essentially looked at my life and it was like walking into someone else's apartment, not my own. And
Hmm.
I was like, okay, well, this version of me is now living in the old version of me's space. So I need to do all of these things to get this to the point where this version of me feels comfortable living. So, it
Mm-hmm.
was as simple as cleaning my apartment or doing the laundry correctly or washing dishes or, you know, a number of things. I got patio furniture and stuff to sit outside to make it more comfortable. I got art for the house and I, made shelving and I organized my closet and I started flossing every single day and making my bed every single day. And so there was just all
Yeah.
these like little habits, stuff that I should have picked up all along the way in life that I just decided to push to the back because they weren't immediately important. But
Mm-hmm.
once I realized, like, oh, wait, because I can't find a pair of underwear, it's taking me an extra 15 minutes of my day just to look for underwear. When if I just organize my closet, then we're going to be a whole lot better off. And then I don't have to be as frustrated about, being on time and yada, yada, yada. And it's like, okay, well, let's work back from here and let's start with making our bed in the morning and flossing our teeth at night and filling in the little gaps in between. And so,
Yes.
when I got back from that and realized that, like, I, one, had so much incredible potential that I had been wasting before, and now knew that I had the ability to move my life in a different direction. Uh, and, that I had started to make all of these awesome changes. I stopped doing cocaine, I stopped binge drinking, I stopped chewing tobacco, I, reworked my relationship with, pornography and objectifying women and stuff like that. And so there were all these things that I already knew that I had made a major change on.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started healing my relationship with my family, and that started with, forgiving my father for, the animosity in our relationship, forgiving my brother for not really being there for me, and just having more open conversations with the people in my life. And it was at that point that I started writing my book. And, I started writing my book in November of 2022. Um,
Okay.
uh, but it was basically a full year plus from that point until I really felt like my life was moving in the direction that I had envisioned it when I had my experience with the mushrooms. Because
Okay.
essentially all of 2023 was a very lonely period for me. Because I had broken away from all of my friends that were going out drinking and doing coke, and I didn't really have anything in common with them anymore. And I'm, not sure what direction my life's going in. I'm still working the job that I had had, which, at this point is very unfulfilling and doesn't make me feel good about waking up and doing it on a daily basis. And, so there were always just like really big question marks of where life was going. But I just
Yeah.
had to keep the faith that it was going in the right direction and to keep flossing my teeth at night and making my bed in the morning and doing all those little things in between and just staying positive that it was going to turn out in the right direction.
Right. And it's funny because we underestimate the little things, right?
Hmm.
But there's a when you start to build consistency in the little things, it helps you to then build the consistency in the other areas that are much bigger and have a bigger effect.
Yeah, that's it exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I just recently finished putting one of my clients through a program that I called the Change Your Fucking Life program.
Hmm.
And in the program, it asks the participant to work out 11 different workouts per week, and that's obviously a commitment. But it also includes meal prepping so that you know that you have, the main staples of what you're doing from a nutrition standpoint handled. It includes, tracking the water that you bring in. It includes
Hmm.
making your bed in the morning and flossing your teeth at night. It includes journaling, right? And so it includes all these little things that we know we should be doing. But until you have a reminder there to keep yourself accountable, you might not be 100% of the time.
That's it. That's it. So after the experience, you really had integration,
Yep.
being able to integrate your experience and what you wanted to take out of that into your life, as well as an identity shift, an identity reconstruction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that, an embodiment or behavioral alignment where you started to actually put into action the parts of yourself that you are now integrating, making
Mm-hmm.
decisions from that new self that stepped into that apartment, basically.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
exactly it. And I love to, when I'm working with people now in my coaching, uh, something I always ask is like, what is a very clear vision for who you want to be, right? And if I can
Yeah.
have people create that very clear vision for who they want to be,
Mm-hmm.
then it makes all the other decisions that they have to make very easy because they can ask themselves, is this something that that version of John would want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Or is this something that the old version of John would do?
Yeah.
And if you can make the decision that the ideal version of yourself would make, then you're going to be on the right path and you're going to be creating that new reality for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And today, what is it that you do in your work with people?
Uh, the easiest way to say is personal training. But
Mm.
if you've ever worked with a personal trainer, I mean, I don't know, how special I am from this regard, but it's much deeper than that.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah,
I've had
yeah.
personal trainers. They don't talk to me about these things.
Yeah, and
So,
there's muscle gain and there's fat loss and everything like that, but it's what
yeah.
happens in here that really makes a difference for people.
That's it. That's the shift. So that when they move on and they're not working with you, what's in here keeps them on the path that they started on.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
The name of my company is Get Psyched Fitness, and I call my people the psychos. And so we call it going into psycho mode, and there's a
Okay.
there's a level that you get to when you're training with me, and that's belief in yourself, it's conviction, and in the program what you believe yourself to be capable of. And when my clients stop working with me, a lot of times they'll send me photos or videos of the workouts that they do on their own, like saying, "Yeah, psycho mode for this one, baby."
Oh, nice.
Mhm.
Great. And how did ultra marathoning come into the picture for you?
Yeah, well, so really it started as I'll back up. I ran a bit when I was in high school. I was a pitcher. I was a baseball pitcher. And
Okay.
so after pitching, I would have to run a half mile for every inning that I pitched. So if I threw 7 innings, I'd have to run 3.5 miles after the game. And so I got a
Wow.
bit into running then. It followed
Okay.
me through my freshman year of college, but essentially after my freshman year of college, I did not run at all, basically, from then until 2023. And in
Okay.
2022, when I had my big mushroom shift, one of the big things that I did when I was getting my life in order was get my bike fixed. And
Mm.
once I did that, I started to explore fitness a little bit differently because up until that point, it had been all powerlifting for me.
Okay.
Squat, bench, deadlift, different bodybuilding style things. Um, but then as I went through my transition phase, a really big question came up of like, how do I actually want to move my body? Because all
Mm.
the powerlifting had made me super stiff. I was immobile. I didn't really feel healthy. And
Right.
so I got really big into yoga. I got my bike fixed and started riding that. And it was about a year afterward when I was, really, I'd gone through that lonely year and I realized that there needed to be a next step in my evolution. And one big thing that had held me back for a while was codependence. Always just waiting for somebody else to do something with me before, going
Mm.
to a concert or whatever it was, right? And
Yeah.
I had wanted to sign up for a Spartan race for the longest time. And I'm not sure
Ah.
if you know what they are, but they're obstacle course races.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, and so there was one here in Florida, and they had a 5K, a 10K, and a half marathon. And, I was thinking, oh, I'll go do this. And as I'm laying in bed the night before deciding which race I wanted to sign up for, I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do the half marathon. So I got up out of bed and I signed up for the half marathon. And I gave myself, I had 2 weeks to prepare for that point. I had not run in 12 years, but if there's people out there doing it, we're going to find a way to do it.
There you go.
And so I showed up on race day and willed myself to the finish line. I ended up finishing in the top 5%. And so that really opened my eyes to how capable I am. And so I
Mhm.
started to just seek out more ways to challenge myself. So 6 months after that, I did my first triathlon despite not really knowing how to swim. And then
Oh
6 months,
my.
yeah, and that was really dangerous. I do not advocate that. Learn how to swim, please.
Yes.
And then 6 months after that, I get an invite to go do an ultra marathon on a Tuesday, and the race is on Saturday. And I'm like, well, fuck it, it's free, let's do it. So I showed up on race day and ended up running a 46-mile ultra marathon with zero training.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so, yeah, I just kind of went through this phase of accepting challenges that I thought were over my head just to see if I am capable of it.
There you
And
go.
so that turned into doing a couple strongman competitions last year in 2025. And then as the summer of 2025 was coming to an end, I did that 46 miler again. And
Hmm.
that was supposed to be a warm up race for whatever my next race was going to be, which I was between
Okay.
signing up for the Tampa Bay 100 or the Across Florida 200. And those numbers are the number of miles that each of them would be. And I realized after doing 46 the second time and crawling to the finish line again, that if I signed up for the 200, no matter how much I trained, it would be a absolute slog to the finish line. And I
Hmm.
was like, you know what? If I can train really hard for this 100-mile race, I can maybe not feel as terrible as I feel crossing the finish line of this 46 miler. So let's
Hmm.
pour everything that I have into training for this for the next couple months and see how we can do with actual real dedication towards it. And so uh, I put I put my money where my mouth was for 2 months. I got my training runs up to, uh, you know, back to back long runs of 18 miles one day and then 32 the next day. So 50 miles in 2 days was my peak as far as training was concerned. But I showed up on race day and ended up really surprising myself with my competence in the race. And I finished in sixth place overall, a total time
Woohoo!
of 23 hours. Yeah. Which 24
Awesome.
sub 24-hour 100 miler is kind of like the gold standard for 100-mile races. So I
Okay.
was able to do that very competently and even ran the last 5 miles straight without walking. So really, a long way to come in 2 years from not running at all to completing a sub 24-hour ultra marathon in less than 2 years. And then I won a race 2 months ago. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. On February 7th, I did a last man standing treadmill race. It was 5 miles on the treadmill every hour until there was one person remaining. And 17 hours later, 85 miles later, your boy Johnny B was the last one up there. So that was a lot of fun.
Nice, nice.
Hmm.
Congratulations.
Thank
This
you.
sounds like, the last few years have been saying yes to what may be challenging or scary or just what felt like it was out of your comfort zone, but you said yes.
Yeah, completely,
Yeah.
completely. If you told me, you know, back 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when I had this experience, like any time before that, that I would be running 100 miles,
Right.
not me. No, are you kidding? But something about the use of the psilocybin and just seeing the potential um,
Yeah.
of this to help enhance my platform and really that's what I feel it is, right? Is a way for people to connect with me and to understand the depth of transformation and the power that these things
Hmm.
have to help people create their own reality.
Yep.
Because running 100 miles is something that kind of crosses cultures, it crosses everything. It's something that is a completely monumental task that only a somewhat insane person would would take on. But it's it can be used as a metaphor for anything else in life, right? That
Yes, it
whatever we
can.
want to achieve is possible with the right level of dedication. And so,
That's
I want to
right.
give that to people is the ability to ask themselves what is possible for me And
Yeah.
what could mushrooms potentially help you do? Because, for me, they helped me go from, uh, wherever the hell I was,
Mm.
to living the life I am now. And
Yeah.
it's been so many beautiful steps along the way, and so many, so many, so many more beautiful steps to come.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How would you say men can rebuild their self respect, their self esteem, their self concept after addiction?
I think it's about finding the wins.
Hmm.
Yeah. Journaling for me was huge,
Okay.
because I would create to-do lists, and my to-do lists would often be simple things, stuff that I knew that I needed to do, and I kind of asked myself, well, what's the point in writing that down? But if I can get enough things on my to-do list that, I know what I'm going to be doing in a given day, then I can
Mm-hmm.
stack wins. And by checking off things on that to-do list, I can make sure that I'm making consistent progress and also feel good about myself on a regular basis so that, like,
Mm.
even that lonely year where I, feel like I'm not really doing anything, I'm in this, quagmire where I'm, I wouldn't say making bad decisions because I wasn't like making bad decisions like I was earlier in my life, but just really not moving forward in the same way that I had hoped when I had originally had that vision. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of my free time was being put into writing my book, so it felt like I wasn't really moving much, right? But I was able to consistently stack wins and stack wins and stack wins, which show me that, like, even though it feels like life's not really moving, I know that I'm doing the right thing to keep myself moving forward. And so I think that's a really big thing that, basically anybody can use, whether you're coming out of addiction or not, is to just find the wins and consistently look for those ways to tell yourself that you're on the right path.
Absolutely. I like that. It resonates in the work that I've done over the years with male clients. There's a desire to feel like action is being taken,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's male energy. And I think when you can stack wins, as you say, it does help to keep you moving, putting one foot in front of the other.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And especially, even that year you said that not much seemed like it was going forward, but it helped you to continue to move forward because something I'm sure you knew was coming. There's
Mm-hmm.
a there's a feeling when you're moving in the right direction, like a wind behind you or an anticipation. And so those stacking of the winds does help you to continue to move forward.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
I when I went out to run my first ultra,
Hmm.
again 46 miles, and again untrained, right? Showing up on race day, having not run anything longer than 13 miles before, I know I got to run 36. The big question comes up: how the hell am I going to do this? And
Uh-huh.
the
Yes.
answer is, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
Damn straight, Siobhan.
That's it.
Yep.
As with everything, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to do something, you start with the first step of it and move
Yep.
forward. Yeah,
Exactly. Just get your hands dirty.
absolutely.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Nothing to work for.
So moving from the experience of toxic masculinity to conscious masculinity, right? You've had a transition, an
Mm-hmm.
identity shift, and that is a powerful thing. It's more than just growth, right? We think a lot of times, in the self-help world, we think a lot about changing of mindset and thought process. But for you, this shift has been integration of a completely new you, an elevated version of yourself, would you say?
Yeah, completely. The
Yeah.
the person that I am now is who I had hoped to be 3.5 years
Hmm.
ago.
There you go. There you
And,
go.
as far as the masculinity part's concerned, I've found that just by being authentically myself, that
Hmm.
it gives off the energy that I had been hoping to cultivate through those fake versions of myself.
Mm.
Because there's a confidence that, like when I stepped out of my or stepped off the bike to engage with that guy yesterday, right?
Hmm.
Unless someone's got a gun, there's not a person that I fear physically.
Yeah.
And that's that I mean that's a small piece of what makes me me, right? But I think that
Yeah.
shows a lot, right? Is that I'm not afraid of what could potentially happen. And
Yeah.
the people in my life see me as that, that I feel like I feel like a father figure to a lot of people in my life. And
Mm.
it's a really beautiful thing to feel as a guy, right? Is to feel this, like, that people look up to me. They look to me for strength. They look to me for courage. They look to me for passion and
Hmm.
excitement and validation and all of these things that, you know, I'm consistently looked at as the person who has it together. And
Yeah.
it's incredible to be there now and to know that, without trying to be self-aggrandizing or anything like that, that I'm the chosen leader of pretty much whatever pack that I enter. And it's just because of
Mm.
who I am. It's not because I'm trying to be.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
Hmm.
What would you say to someone who thinks that mushrooms are a magic fix?
Yeah, there's, I mean, they are called magic for a reason. They are pretty effective. But nothing's that simple, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you can eat all the mushrooms that you want, but if you don't go into it with the right intentionality and uh, the right want to for yourself, nothing's going to
Hmm.
change in your life because it's just going to end up being something that ended up being a really nice experience that one time, or maybe a really terrible experience that one time, right?
Right.
But
Hmm.
for me, when I first tried eating them, the experiences were objectively, terrible on a number of levels. So much trauma that I had got brought up, and I would cry for hours and hours and hours. But
Hmm.
because I was able to look at it with an objective lens, and because I had already started doing some of the self-development work, some of the reading and stuff like that,
Yeah.
all of these things that I had heard about but never really internalized, I started to recognize in myself, and I was able to make the changes that I'd been hoping to make for myself for a long time. And so, it took the mushrooms, but more than that, it took the want to be better for myself and for the people in my life.
Yeah. There you go. So psychedelics do not build character. They help to reveal the potential of that
Exactly.
character, right? And character is then built by the integration that you bring back with you from
Hmm.
that journey experience. Yeah.
Yeah, big
Nice.
time.
Nice. So if someone feels stuck in dopamine chasing, right,
Hmm.
where should they start?
I would say start by looking at yourself and looking at your habits.
Hmm.
Because that's really the biggest thing is that once you have awareness of what your habits are, you can change them. But
Yeah.
until you can take a step back and say, oh wow, every time I feel, and I was just doing this yesterday, right? I'm writing a speech right now. When I would feel stuck on, a thought, immediately my brain goes, okay, let's open up Instagram. No, 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 no,
Oh,
we cannot do
interesting.
that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm not immune to it, but I recognize it. And so because I recognize it, then I can do something about it and I can stop those patterns.
Yeah.
But awareness really is the biggest thing.
Absolutely. I think that's always where it starts. It has to start there, but it can't stop there. You
Hmm.
know, there are a lot of people who are aware of what's going on for them or what quote unquote their problems are, but they're not always in a place where they're ready to step into the work to shift and transform those things and to
Yep.
step into a higher version of themselves.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so many people aren't. I tell people all the time, like, if you had told me that
Mm.
I could use mushrooms at the time that I found them and was like, here, you should do this. It'll make you better. I would have told him to fucking kick rocks, right? Because
Yeah.
I wouldn't have approached it with an open heart.
Right.
But because I found them the way that I did, which was sort of accidental, it was me just, going
Yeah.
into what was intended to be a recreational experience, it forced me to look at those things and it forced me to be open with it.
Yeah.
And so, it just requires everybody to, find it on their own time and feel like it's their choice with how they go through life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much, John, for joining me here in this space to have this important conversation. It is not often that we hear the male's perspective for this kind of work, right? And I know some really great men who have done some psychedelic work and had similar revelations about their lives and have turned their lives around. A couple of them military men, and so
Hmm.
when you think about how the military men move, and they can come to integrate a new self, that's powerful. So I am so glad to hear your story and for you to share it here in this space and to hopefully affect someone else's life as they're
There we go.
moving forward. That's the key there. If any listeners would like to reach out to you, how can they connect with you? What's
The
the best
best
way?
way is Instagram. I'm on
Okay.
Instagram at Johnny B, JohnniEbe.
Okay.
Uh, you can also find me on Instagram at Get Psyched Fitness, get underscore psyched underscore fitness, getpsychedfitness.com, or on X slash Twitter at Psilocybin Fit.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. And I'll make sure too to also put a link in the show notes for your book as well.
Beautiful. I appreciate
Yeah,
that, Siobhan.
I would love folks to be able to read that. And
And
to the
that's your
audience,
mindset is
oh,
that's
say
your
again?
mindset is your reality. It's
Yeah.
available on Amazon, Audible, what Kindle, Apple
Kindle.
Books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so audiobook and physical copy. It's out there. Purple cover.
Perfect. Purple, yep, purple cover.
Hmm.
Perfect. And to the audience who's listening, the real story here isn't the mushrooms, but it's the taking responsibility for your life, your own life. It's the taking courage to step into courage to really look at your life honestly and then to build something stronger, to build something new out of it. So thanks for joining me here on the Expansion Room. I look forward to seeing and hearing from all of you about this particular episode. Take care.